Hey everyone, welcome back to Nick Sonic. Today, we're diving into one of the most controversial topics in modern culture, LGBTQ+ rights, gender identity, and wokeism. From political battles to cultural clashes, this issue has divided not just the US, but the world. Are there really only two genders? Is support for LGBTQ+ rights challenging cultural values, or is it paving the way for equality? Let's break it all down and explore the global response to this growing movement. First, let's break down what we're talking about. At the heart of this debate is gender and sexual orientation. Advocates say gender exists on a spectrum and push for LGBTQ+ rights such as marriage, adoption, and gender identity recognition. On the other side, traditionalists argue that these ideas erode cultural values, specifically the belief that there are only two genders. So, who's right? And what are the implications of each stance? On the left-wing side, LGBTQ+ rights are seen as fundamental human rights. Progressives argue that gender is not strictly binary, and sexual orientation exists on a spectrum. Their core belief is that individuals should have the freedom to define their own gender identity and express their sexual orientation without facing discrimination, violence, or social exclusion. The left-wing perspective views LGBTQ+ rights as an extension of broader social justice movements. They believe that for a society to be truly inclusive, it must recognize and protect the rights of individuals regardless of their gender identity or sexual orientation. Many on the left support policies that provide legal protections for LGBTQ+ individuals, including anti-discrimination laws, the right to marry, and the ability to access healthcare and adoption services. Progressives also emphasize the importance of visibility and representation for LGBTQ+ individuals in public life. They argue that recognizing non-binary and transgender identities is crucial for challenging traditional gender roles and for creating a society that values diversity. For the left, this fight for equality isn't just about legal rights, it's about changing the social norms that have historically marginalized LGBTQ+ individuals. In education, left-wing advocates support teaching children about the diversity of gender identities and sexual orientations. They believe this creates a more tolerant and accepting society, one that embraces all individuals as they are. In summary, the left-wing position is that LGBTQ+ rights are integral to creating a just, equal, and inclusive society. They argue that gender and sexual diversity should be celebrated and that everyone deserves the freedom to live authentically, without fear of discrimination. From the right-wing perspective, the core of the debate revolves around the preservation of traditional cultural and religious values. Many conservatives believe that gender is biologically determined, male and female, and that any attempt to redefine these categories undermines the natural order and social stability. This perspective holds that family structures, based on a heterosexual, binary understanding of gender, are fundamental to society. Therefore, expanding LGBTQ+ rights is often seen as a threat to this foundation. Right-wing critics argue that the push for gender fluidity, non-binary identities, and same-sex relationships undermines the stability of traditional families. For them, maintaining these conventional family units is crucial for raising children in a stable environment, and they believe that modern LGBTQ+ advocacy confuses children about gender roles and identity. Religious beliefs also play a significant role in the right-wing perspective. Many conservatives view marriage as a sacred union between a man and a woman, and they fear that LGBTQ+ rights infringe upon their religious freedoms. They argue that being forced to accept or participate in practices that contradict their faith, like same-sex marriage or gender transition rights, violates their right to religious expression. In summary, the right-wing perspective is rooted in the belief that the expansion of LGBTQ+ rights undermines the traditional values and structures that hold society together. They view wokeism, which includes support for LGBTQ+ rights, as a divisive movement that challenges long-held cultural norms and confuses younger generations.
This debate isn't confined to the US globally. countries are taking very different stances on LGBTQ+ rights. In nations like Canada, Germany, Thailand, and many more, LGBTQ+ rights are broadly accepted and protected by law. On the other hand, some countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia have harsh restrictions on LGBTQ+ individuals, with penalties that range from imprisonment to death. For example, in Canada, same-sex marriage was legalized in 2005, while in Saudi Arabia and Uganda, same-sex relationships are punishable by death. This global divide shows just how complex and varied the struggle for LGBTQ+ rights is. Finally, let's talk about the societal implications of this ongoing debate. Advocates of LGBTQ+ rights argue that they foster a more inclusive and diverse society, while opponents worry that they erode cultural traditions and confuse younger generations. Schools, workplaces, and public spaces are facing pressure to address these issues, which has made them a point of contention. So where do you stand? Are traditional values being eroded, or are we making progress toward a more inclusive world? This debate isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Thanks for watching Nick Sonic. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe and join the conversation.